This is not a show. This is an experience. This is PV Roundtable Talk. I'm your host, Bailey.
I'm your host, Sabra Robinson.
I'm Maya Sims.
Are y'all ready to talk about it?
Let's talk about it.
All right, y'all. We have a very special episode for you all today. Today we have with us Dr. Perine, a psychologist and professor of psychology here at Prairie View A&M University. Dr. Perine, thank you so much for visiting us on the show today. We cannot wait to hear what you have to say.
Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. So today's episode is about women's mental health and everything that falls into that. So I wanted to start the topic off with generational trauma and how that affects women. Sabra?
Yeah, the first question that we wanted to ask under the category of generational trauma is how does trauma get passed down through generations, and what are some common effects seen in those impacted?
Very good question. There's a couple of answers to that. One is that we as a community have the generational trauma way back from slavery. And then you have the 60s, and then you even have today with the, people getting killed left and right, police brutality. And so when you see these kind of images, it's in our head that this is what happens to us. And so we're always walking around thinking it's possible that we could die at any moment. That's one aspect. And then you have within your own family. I can give you an example. Like I got the opportunity to visit family in New York, and my cousin, when she was 10 years old, witnessed her aunt and grandmother being killed by her aunt's boyfriend. It was a stalker situation. He came into the house, decided, he couldn't live without her. So he shot her 5 times and shot my aunt in the head, killed her. And my 10-year-old, at the time she was 10, my cousin saw this. I was 10 at the time. I just saw her. I haven't seen her in years. And so seeing her now, she has, her relationship with her children are not the best. Relationship with her mother is not the best. And a lot of it has to do with the unresolved trauma that happened all those years ago. No one had counseling back then. No one even talked about it. It was like you saw your grandmother and aunt shot and killed at home while you're enjoying yourself, and nothing was ever done about it. Nothing was ever processed about it. So what has happened is generation to generation, and that particular family has been conflictual. Again, that's individual. So if you grow up in a violent household, if you see domestic violence, you see people get killed, that's one type of trauma. Now, how does that impact you? When you're impacted by trauma, the brain changes. It numbs you because that's your way, your body's way of protecting you. So you become numb. And what happens when you're numb? Are you the smartest person you could be when you're numb? Are you able to feel when you're numb? So when those things happen, you're starting a trend of now you're in school, you're not as smart as you could be. It takes you longer to learn, it takes you longer to do anything. And so what ends up happening is generation of trouble in school. Low academic performance. If you have low academic performance, what's the likelihood you're going to college? And as most people know, college is the way to make at least more money, more finances. And again, you can see it in my part of my family where they've struggled all these years because of that one incident happened years ago. And I think it's important that we as a race really think about how it feels to be a Black person today. In my class, we watched, just a Swagger, which comes on Apple TV. We watched the episode about it, and I asked my students to, look at their watches if they had this kind of watch, and just looking at their blood pressure to see how it's impacted by watching a scene in which some racial injustice was happening. And one of my students was able to say her heart rate went from probably 60 to 80 to like 130, I want to say. So it's just watching something on TV. So if you're watching something, just watching something, and your blood pressure jumps, your pulse jumps from watching something, what do you think happens to us on a daily basis? This is why as Black people, we're more likely to die young, we're more likely to have heart issues, more likely to have all of these things. And all because of the trauma we experienced years ago that's been passed down.
And I did some research on this before we came onto the show, and there was a term that they used a lot, which was epigenetics, which was your outside forces have an effect on you, and they can affect you and your DNA and your mental state. Like you said, it can affect your brain chemistry. And I think, like you said, it's so important that we discuss it as Black people because there's such a stigma around therapy. And it's like you just can't go to therapy. That's not something that we do. I have a therapist. I love my therapist. Gotta have a therapist.
Good for you.
And it's really important to take the stigma take the stigma from you need professional help, because it's not a joke. It's not a joke. Some people do need professional help. There is help out there that you can't get from your friends or your family. You need somebody with some letters behind their name.
You do.
Mhm.
I'm proud that you are announcing that you have a therapist, because that is one of the hardest part of my job, is that I would say Texas is a little better than Louisiana. When I was in Louisiana, people did not want to accept mental health. Either they, use alcohol, drugs, or pastor or priest.
Yeah.
That's how people cope. And going to a therapist is unheard of. People say, I'm not crazy, I don't need a therapist. And I'm here to say we're all crazy, if you want to use that term. In some form or fashion, we've all been impacted by something, whether it's just being Black. You might have had a happy childhood, but just being Black in these days is not an easy thing to be. It's a lot. It's a lot.
So I have a question about, how do you go about getting people who have the stigma of therapy in their minds, and that I'm not going to therapy at all mindset, out of that mindset?
One is just talking about it, being open. And I try, at least when I'm teaching, to teach in a way that people feel comfortable, because that's all therapy is. It's a safe space for you to be. It's a safe space for you to express yourself. Safe space for you to say, this is what's going on. Because I don't care how close you are to your friends, there are some things you still won't tell them. I don't care how close you are to your mom, your dad. There's still some things you won't tell them. And people are, I've had parents say, my child tells me everything. I'm like, no, they don't. They don't. Because they don't want you to be disappointed. There's so many things why. I don't care how close you are. There's some things they keep to themselves. That's human nature. Because you do think, if I say this, how is this person going to judge me? So you don't. And therapy is that space where you can actually get out what you feel, what you think, and express without feeling like I'm about to be judged.
Right.
Because that does shut you down the minute you are judged. And unfortunately, sometimes in therapy, I have such a good relationship with some of my clients. Then they start seeing me like a parent figure or a family figure. Then I can see they're starting, now they're not telling me things. I'm like, we're in therapy, so you need to tell me whatever it is that you're going through. I don't need you to sugarcoat it or you worry what I'm going to think. I said, by now you should know I'm not going to judge you, because I've worked with child abusers. I've worked with people who've killed people. I've worked with people who have done some horrible things. My job is not to judge you. My job is try to understand where it's coming from so that you don't do it again.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And on a topic of generational, when it comes to family holding people hostage, how would you encourage someone to still keep going
When you say family holding hostage, like
to what they used to be, or what they just hold on to, like, oh, you're breaking a pattern, this is not what we usually do?
Okay. That's a hard one. That is a hard one. What I find in my work, especially with adults, most adults who come to therapy have mother issues, more than father. It's something about not having a good relationship with your mother that triggers something inside, and it's hard. Those people are harder to treat than someone who has a good relationship with their mom who's going through something, because that first bond is the most important. And so when you start to be different from your mother, when you start to break those patterns, it can cause a rift. Now, people may agree or not agree with me. I'm a big proponent of, you do not stay in toxic relationships, even if it is your mom, even if it is your family. For your own benefit, sometimes you have to leave your family. You have to move on. And is that a hard thing for most people? Yes, it is. It is, because that's the people who brought you into this world. But if you're not happy when you're around them, you feel less than yourself around them, then you're not happy either way. So might as well be happy and more peaceful than unhappy and troubled. And it is hard. It is hard. I'm not going to say is that it's easy for for people breaking away from their family, but this is what I talk about all the time. I'm like, what is it that you want? What is your vision for yourself? And does that fit in what your family is like? And 9 times out of 10, it isn't. We assume that most parents or most families want you to be better.
Yeah.
That's not true. There are a lot of moms, there are a lot of dads, there are a lot of families who like, I'm good, so you're good. And that happens a lot. We can't assume you want better for your children, because everybody doesn't think that way.
I think that's a major point that you just brought up, because one thing that's really prominent between mothers and daughters, and I see this a lot in the Black community, is moms being jealous of their daughters, or moms just like completely not, I don't want to say hating because that's a strong word, but hating their daughters. And that can come off like so prominently in the way that women are raised and the way that they act in the world, because there's this old quote by men, of course, that's like, a woman's daughter is her punishment for the way that she acts. And I think that is so, I know, right? I think that is so prominent in people's minds, maybe not today, but subconsciously. I think that has affected the way that women look at their daughters, and the way that they're raised to be brought up into the world is not as this person, this wonderful woman that, or this wonderful girl that I have to raise into a woman, but as this girl who is just a projection of everything bad that I am. And oof, that's the end of that sentence. Go ahead.
On that same topic, on the topic of generational trauma, I wanted to ask, like Bailey has said, it was that situation was more prominent in the community of Black women. Is there any more generational trauma that's more prominent in the community of Black women?
It's probably what you just said more than anything else. And there is this notion of, and again, it's because we don't like ourselves. That's where it's coming from. Because if you love who you are, why wouldn't you love your offspring? Why wouldn't you love your daughter?
Right.
So if you don't love your daughter or you're jealous of her, that comes from you not loving yourself. And as a community, that is something we struggle with as women.
Yes.
One of my pet peeves when I have clients and patients is when a woman says, I don't have women friends. I don't trust women. I'm like, how can you not trust any woman? Well, I don't, because they'll backstab you. I say, yeah, but you didn't trust several men in your life. They've hurt you, they've broken up with you, but you'll try again with a man. So why won't you try again with a woman? Friendships are important, and until we realize that we need each other as women and we're not each other's enemies, then we will not survive, because women are the mothers of this earth. And if we can't bond as sisters, we won't go far.
Big statements. The last question I have under the topic of generational trauma is, how can breaking the cycle of generational trauma help empower women and transform family and friends?
Oh man, if you can break those bonds, it's just, it's almost like, I think of us, we are great people. One of my heroes is Harriet Tubman, right? If you know anything about Harriet Tubman, she did a whole lot and never got caught. Never got caught. Most selfless person, kept going back to get people. In a time where just being Black, you can get killed just because you're walking down the street with no consequences. In some cases, you can still happen today like that. But she did all of that to save people, very selfless, carried a gun just in case people were scared. You're like, you got to keep coming with me because I know they're going to tell you where I am, because they will torture you. So you got to come with me. So I use her when I'm feeling down, when I'm thinking about life. I'm like, Harriet Tubman lived in a time, went through all kind of stuff for the betterment of her people, for the betterment of us. So why can't we do that now, right? And just think how phenomenal she was in the time of slavery. Just think if slavery didn't exist, what kind of woman she would have been. How great and powerful she would have been, even more than what she was. I always say that when I think about my students and I think about us as a people, we're beautiful and strong as we are. Just think if we didn't have the shackles of racism and history of slavery, how much more powerful we would be. So if we can find a way to break those generational, because we're talking about more than just even within our families, but as a community, we would just soar. And I think the rest of the world knows this. That's why they keep us fighting. That's why they keep us with this social media, with people, talking about each other. No one cares about positive. It's always about what's the latest drama, what's the latest.
Right.
We keep us separate. I don't think there's any other race that has so much drama in social media and reality TV as us. And I think it's purposely done, by the way.
Yeah, I like that you brought up the fact that she kept going back and just kept going back, because as Black women and as women, we're raised and we are reared to be the person that other people can lean on. We give away so much of ourselves to other people so that we have a place, and our place and our purpose is to be helpful. Like sometimes that's just how we're raised. It's to be helpful. It's to be useful. And it's seen so much that if we can't do these things that we're meant to do, like motherhood, being a wife, all these things, what's the point? That was a big problem. No, that's still a big problem, but that was a really big problem before I was born. But
still,
it got a little better, I think, from when that happened. It's just, what was I saying? Oh, the point of we are raised to be a ride or die.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
you can't do that. You have to focus on yourself 1st
Mhm.
before you give yourself away to other people.
Mm.
You can't always be a ride or die. Sometimes you have to, like you said, let people go, no matter how hard it is.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And on the other
Okay.
side, I still see, like, I love how you talked about fellowship between women,
Mhm.
because like the grace can be different depending on how you are brought up.
Mhm.
So what would you say, like, about fellowship, and why is it so important?
I could say I love my friends. Like we do girls trip. I mean, we're the original girls trip, by the way, from New Orleans, Essence Fest. That's a tradition that we've been doing for a long time. Just hung out with my friends 2 weeks ago in Vegas. Like this is what we do a lot. We actually, check on each other, touch base with each other, and we're like, we wouldn't know what to do without our friends. And so when I hear women say I don't have friends, I just think that's so lonely. Like, and have I had friends over the years that hurt me? Yes, but they're no longer my friends. Like that's just it. Like
Yeah.
and the ones who are, they still are. It's like
Mm.
there are people over the year, they're in your life for a reason, for a season, and some people are in your life for a lifetime.
Mm.
And when you have that, there's nothing you know more special than having a friend that you can rely on, that you can talk to, that you can call
Absolutely.
and have your back. Again, we're not perfect. We may argue, fuss, all that good stuff. But at the end of the day, I know that they're there for me. So for me, I'm always encouraging women to reach out. Even if you just have one friend, you don't have to have a group of friends, you don't have a lot. But if you have one good friend, and if y'all mess up, y'all have issues, figure it out, talk about it. Don't just discount that person. Figure out what happened. Why did do this? One of my good friends, best friends since 10 years old, we fell out for like maybe 4 years, didn't even talk for 4 years. And the one day she just called me out the blue, was like, we really need to talk.
Mm.
And I was like, But then I was like, she's right, we need to talk.
Mhm.
And since then we've been close, we've been tight again
That's
because we
beautiful.
really talked about it, and we let our issues go, and we're like, let's move forward, let's see what happens.
Mhm.
And I, definitely don't regret, you know, letting my guard down and say, okay, let's just talk about it and figure this out. So
Yeah. And also on the topic of relationships, another question we wanted to ask, and it's a touchy topic, but domestic violence. What are the warning signs that is usually normalized or even romanticized?
It is.
Yeah.
Possessive man
Mhm.
or possessive woman, because there are a lot of lesbian relationships that are very violent. One of my good friend's sister was burned by her girlfriend, like literally tied up, and uh, she doused her with fingernail polish remover and set her on fire. So,
Wow.
and it was because she was possessive, jealous, and so one sign of it is definitely someone who's possessive,
Mhm.
meaning they want to know where you are at all times. Anytime you go anywhere, they're giving you a hard time, and you might think it's cute because you might be like, "Oh," and no, it's not cute.
Mhm.
You were a person before you were with him or her, and you're still a person.
Absolutely.
So you have the right to say, no, I'm hanging out with other people, and I'm also with you.
Yeah.
Someone who doesn't want to get to know your friends,
Mm.
that should be a red flag, because your friends are important. And if you're dating someone, you hope that they enjoy your friends. And of course, sometimes you may not mingle with your friends, but at least he or she made that effort.
Mhm.
But if they're not even trying to get to know your friends or your family, that is a sign that they are very, a sign of potential abuse.
Mhm.
Again, like I said, in my family, we lost family members because of the domestic violence. And in my work, I've worked with people who have dealt with men who will kill you. Like there's no, I don't, and that's the thing. If you are violent toward each other, because sometimes women fight and they like it's okay, but a man is much stronger. So I don't care if you hit back.
Right.
He can hit you in a way that you're gone, you're dead.
Mm.
So when women do that, I say don't hit him, because you might hit him in a way that he's going to react. Because sometimes women say he's not. No matter what I do, he's not going to hurt me. I'm like, if you pop him and he didn't expect it, he might just. And it might be a man who never will hit a woman, but anybody could be triggered. So I tell women, do not play that game. Do not say, well, he can't hit me, he's not going to touch me. Keep your hands to yourself to make everything safer.
Absolutely.
But when I have dealt with domestic violence, it's difficult. Often that is not my forte. Let me just say this. That is one of the population that I do not want to work with or like working with, because I guess because of my grandmother, she left my grandfather during I want to say the 60s, a time when women didn't leave men because he was abusive. She was like, I just want peace in my house. I can't do this. He pulled a gun on her, actually clicked it, but it jammed.
Wow.
And so for her, she was like, I can't do this. he was gonna kill me.
Mhm.
She left with her 5 kids, no education, and went and got herself educated, became a librarian, and raised those children on her own. And so, knowing what my grandmother went through and figured out a way to get out of it, it's harder for me when with women. I'm just being honest, because as a therapist, you need to be honest about who you can work with and who you can't.
Mhm.
I will never say I can work with everybody, because that's being a falsehood. And so, domestic violence is harder for me because I've worked with women who refuse to leave, and I'm like, I can't work with you because you keep putting yourself in danger and danger and danger. And that's why they have people who specialize in it, and I refer them to those people. Like, this is the area they love. This is what they want to do. I'm more or less like, he will kill you. Do you get that? Even though it's just a hit there, the possibility of it's happening in my family enough for me to believe it will happen.
Right.
It will happen if you do not leave. And you don't want to take the chance, oh, he's not going to do anything to me. No, you don't want to take that chance. If a man truly loves you, or a woman truly loves you, they're not going to hurt you. Bottom line.
Yeah.
Yes.
And as a woman that loves women, I love that you brought up the topic of women and women relationships, because relationships between homosexual couples are often left out in the concept of domestic violence, normally because people think of it in a heterosexual ideal. So I just wanted to say thank you for bringing us up in that one. But I also wanted to ask you the question of, how do we go about trust in these relationships? Because in this world, we're taught sometimes to, yes, we have to, eventually we have to love a man or love another person, but at the same time, you have to be careful and cautious because they could also do this, that, and the third. So people sometimes go in with too much trust and they trust person super early, or sometimes people go in with no trust and they ruin what could have been a good relationship. So where do you feel like is a healthy amount of trust to have in a person?
I think a lot of how you decide to trust depends on your experiences. I had pretty good experiences, so I tend to go with, I'll trust you till you do something for me not to trust you. That's just how I approach. But I know other people can't do that. They're like, I can't. Like, I go in not trusting and hope that I learn to trust.
Yeah.
I don't think that's necessarily the right way, but I understand where it comes from, especially if you've been hurt, especially if it comes from back with your parents, because often that's where that trust issue first happens, is with the parents. You don't trust your father, you don't trust your mom. Who can you trust? So going forward, that's the issue. So when I'm working with people who have trust issues, it is always the mom or the dad that started that trust issue. Very seldom do I find people who have trust issues, because even like myself, I have a good relationship with both my parents. I've had men who hurt me, and but I still, that wasn't a person for me. But I don't want to go through life not trusting people. I don't want to go through life not trusting people. So a healthy way to do it is to give that person the benefit of the doubt, to sit and talk about it. I always say communication is key, to, especially if it's someone you really like. Is to sit down and say, I have a history with difficulties in trusting people, and this is why, and be honest about it. Because often we try to play these games, act like, but sneak in, trying to see what he's doing, what she's doing, doing stuff that creep in the middle of the night, trying to see what they're up to. It's just stuff that people do to see if I could trust him or her, and you could just be honest about it and say, I don't think I trust you, and this is why.
Wow.
And then sometimes it helps to have good friends around you who know you could say, okay, you tripping, or I think you're right, because sometimes you need third party people to come in and say, what do you think? Do you think I'm, am I being funny, or is this someone I can really trust?
That's
and
so
if you got
good.
good friends, they'll break it down to you.
That's so good.
All right.
Yeah.
That is so
I am
good.
absolutely loving this conversation. Thank you again so much. We are going to come right back with another amazing topic right after the break.
This is a Talk to a Roundtable Roundup. We're currently here at the Sigma Hump Nights. We're going to be playing a game called Guess Their Major. We're going to be showing somebody's major, and you're going to have to guess by the picture. So we're here with Jayla. So Jayla, what do you think his major is?
Probably communications or something like.
You know what? I would give it.
It's close.
Major, that's the major I would have chosen if I had to go back.
Okay, it's close. It's marketing.
You have to guess her major. I'm gonna say
I want to say like business or nursing.
Okay. We're in business. I'm gonna give you business.
Business.
Okay.
What's in business? Let me see. Business marketing. Does
Mhm.
accounting count?
Yes.
I'm gonna say accounting. Finance.
No, bro, you was right. It was marketing. It was
What major is he in?
Electrical engineer. You look kind of smart. You look kind of
Electrical?
smart.
Is it electrical? No, he's actually a chemical engineer.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what is his major?
Business.
Business? No. His major is actually engineering. So, yes.
Major.
Okay.
What's a given?
I want to say a business major.
Okay, I'm gonna give you another try. It's not this.
Okay. Kinesiology?
She's a psychology major. You have to guess her major.
I'm saying nursing. That's a major?
Yes. Okay.
What do y'all think her major is?
Psychology.
No.
Biology.
No.
Criminal justice.
No.
Marketing.
Her major is nursing. Okay, thank y'all so much. That is it.
Coming back from the roundup, I just want to say how important it is to support women, men supporting women, women supporting women with TikTok and social media and everything. This concept of being a girl's girl is real emphasized. And I just want to say again, we all look great. We do. And the smiles that everybody just got an example of why we need to share smiles and support each other. But on the topic of domestic violence, we're going to continue.
Yeah. So my last question was, how would you advise someone to safely leave, with the statistic being that 75% women who leave still are killed or still are in danger?
Just go, and I'm saying this because sometimes you don't know where to go, and I can give you a number, but the quickest answer, because we have cell phones, accessible cell phones, is to Google your nearest domestic violence shelter. There are nonprofit groups that are designed to help you safely get away. What often happens is people go to family. And that's why my cousin, she was thinking she got away from him, and he knows where her mother lived, and he came and still found her. So people, when they run or escape, they're like, oh, I'm gonna go to my family, I'm gonna go here. And if a person really is intent on hurting you, they're gonna find you. But a domestic violence shelter, that is what they're due. They are designed to help you safely get away.
Right.
But again, there's certain things they'll tell you to do that you have to follow their rules. And sometimes women don't, or they start to feel, there's a lot of, variances in why some women still end up getting killed. But the main thing is go to a professional to help you get out of this horrible situation.
There are a lot of instances where women sadly cannot get away, and it ends up with lots of terrible injuries and a lot of the times even death. And so I wanted to bring up the topic of femicide, which professionals have said is Professionals have said the word femicide is great for when we are discussing this specific topic, to remove it from or separate it from just the overarching word of murder.
Homicide,
to enhance and really understand how the gender disparities are really affecting women. And so I wanted to ask you how gender disparities in the world are tallying up the numbers and affecting women in America.
We all know that the world doesn't see us as equal as men already. We don't get paid. I mean, I've been honest about it. I've had a couple of jobs where a man in my same position, same experience, has made 30,000 more than me. So yes, exactly. Exactly. So we know that men are still seen as the dominant, no matter what culture, no matter what race, men are still considered dominant. And so when the world doesn't, value us in general, and then we don't value ourselves, this is how femicide continues. If I very seldom hear men say, oh, I don't deal with dudes. I don't, that's what women say about each other. But I don't hear men talk like that about men. But we as women do. And that is because, again, we have a sense of self-hatred. Now, I'm not even talking about being a black person. I'm talking about this being a woman. That we don't see ourselves as valuable, we don't see ourselves as worthy. There are things we do that, and a lot of us don't see ourselves worthy unless we're in a relationship. There's just different things that we fight against because the way that the world sees us. So with that said, let's not even, we add in reality TV. All you see is women fighting each other,
Mm-hmm.
especially our women. That's what they do. That's all they do. The grown women just straight up fighting each other, usually over a man. And so if a young person is growing up and that's all they see,
Mm-hmm.
it's in their unconscious. This is something that's deep in them now.
Yeah.
That if I get into it with a woman, I'm gonna have to hit her. I'm gonna have to fight her. I'm gonna have to do something to her. And I hate that I can't remember the young woman's name who died in Mexico, but that situation troubled me because she was recorded. These were professional people. They were 25-year-old college graduates who beat this woman and filmed it, supposedly a friend. And nothing was ever done about it. No one's ever got arrested for it, even though it's on video. Nothing was done. And people thought it was funny. This is why people record. This is why people send. It's like, again, no one valued this young woman's life. Her friends didn't. The world didn't. Only her family. And so when we have all of that going against us, this is again why it's so important to have a sisterhood. This is again why, like you just said, compliment. Even if this is what I say to people sometimes. If you see someone you like what they have on, sometimes you stop yourself. Whether it's jealousy, whether it's you're shy, and you might say she look cute, but you don't say it. Push yourself and say it. Push yourself through it. Like, that's cute. I like that.
I always say it.
Yeah, I mean, y'all did. Y'all complimented me when I just said, you like my shoes. So that makes a person smile. I do that a lot. I could do it more, but I definitely do it when I see little girls walking out saying, look how pretty, look how cute. And I can see a young girl with a frown on her face. Just me saying that, all of a sudden they're smiling.
Yeah.
Because I'm making that young girl feel valued at that moment. She doesn't know me. She'll never see me again. But that moment she's smiling. It's a genuine smile. And the more that we as women value ourselves, show our worth, and not rely on men to define our worth, then I believe that over time, this notion of femicide and women being, devalued will go away. Because I'm going to be honest with you, with the job that I made, it was a woman boss who made that decision, a Black woman boss who made that decision. Again, this is even women not valuing men. I mean, valuing women or valuing men over women. And there's some people who won't go to a woman doctor. There are women who won't go to a woman doctor. I've heard women say, I don't go to, especially gynecologists. I don't want no woman looking up me and whatever they say. It's like, so you're still valuing a male's opinion more than you value a woman's. You still somehow believe they're better than we are.
Yeah.
So I do think we need to check ourselves as women and make sure that we're not continuing to perpetuate this notion of we're not worthy or we should hate each other, that, we can't be friends. We can't get along.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on a couple of things that you just mentioned. Mainly the fact that women are seen as disposable.
Yeah.
And that's a major problem.
It is.
A statistic that was from 2022, 89,000 women were murdered within the year of 2022. 55% of those women were murdered by their spouses, their partners, or just people that they knew in general. And that's a major problem because when you think about it, domestic violence, sure, a husband, like they always say, it's always the spouse.
Yeah.
A husband or a lover or an estranged lover or a stalker, which is also a major problem that is not talked about enough. But it's also just the other men in their lives, like their fathers or their brothers or like their uncles, people who feel like they should have power over them, but they're not allowing them to have that power. And when men feel like their power is being taken away from them, they feel the overarching need to exert it.
Yeah.
And that ends up in violence and the death of all these women. And that needs to be fixed, needs to be mended.
I know when Color Purple first came out years ago, a lot of Black men were upset because they were like, she's bashing Black men. Alice Walker said that was her experience. She has her eye is disfigured from a childhood because her brother threw something, hit her in the eye purposely, and he was never punished for it. There was no, crime for it. And she said that just developed in her a sense of, I don't matter. I have her eye is disfigured from childhood to now. It's something that happened. He purposely did it. It wasn't like, oh, I'm sorry. It was like he purposely did it.
Yeah.
And her experience with different men in her life, this is what she saw. So when she wrote Color Purple, she wrote it with, this is what I have seen in my community. And because we as a whole, this is go back to the ride or die, we are supposed to defend our Black men at all costs. She was like, we can't when they're wrong.
Mhm.
We can't continue to do it when they're wrong. And this is something they're talking about in the media too with the Me Too movement. It's not really for us. A lot of black women are still think bad things that happen to black women. White women are getting more justice for some of the things that happen. No one touched the hip hop world. They're starting to do a little bit. They're starting to, but misogyny has been going on in hip hop world forever,
Oh my God.
and women continue to get mishandled, abused, and no one does anything about it. And you might say, well, she subjected herself to it. But if you don't know any better,
Mhm.
I would say this: even if you don't know any better, doesn't mean someone should take advantage of you just because you don't know.
Yeah.
And so our job as women who do know is to help those come to the light.
Yes. Oh my goodness. I'm sorry. I need to take a moment to let that sink in.
So many of your responses are centered around like women supporting other
Mhm.
women. So I just want to re-emphasize. I feel like the biggest like healer of all of this is just if we support each other and that
Yeah.
just be a girl's girl.
Yeah.
Re-emphasize that.
It is.
The medical
Medicalization.
yes, like there's a lot of black women who died during labor.
Mm.
Like why and something that we were talking about was like they don't think that black women have the same pain. So what do you say about that?
Again, this is us not being valued. They do not think black women have the same pain. They think, or better yet, they think we could tolerate pain. And a lot of it is because we have come across as this strong black woman. I don't need anybody when we really do. So some of it is our fault because of what we're trying to portray, but a lot of it is what how the world sees us, and we're not treated equally in terms of labor delivery. You think about Serena Williams said that they kept being like she was literally dying and no one helped her. But we look at Serena, you think, oh, she's strong. You think, she's a fighter, she's this, and so even as rich as she is, the fact that no one really took her seriously when she said, "I need help," was about her being a black woman. At the end of the day, they still saw her as a black woman, because you can't tell me if a white woman said, I'm in trouble, I'm in distress, they would have just ignored her or said, "You're fine, it's in your mind. It's all in your mind, so just get over it." One thing I encourage women is go with your gut. Your gut usually tells you if someone is mistreating you. Sometimes we quiet it. We like, okay, I'm tripping. Even if you are tripping, it's better to be on the safe side than not. If you think that, look, I don't think I'm being treated right or fairly, especially when it comes to the medical profession, especially how people see us. And you can't assume just because a person looks like us, they're being fair to us. Because people, again, still have the same biases and same thing. If you think someone is not treating you right, get a second opinion, get a third opinion. I'm a big proponent. If someone tells me, a doctor tells me one thing, especially if it's something serious, something that I need surgery or that I need, something seriously has to happen, I'm never just going to believe that one person. I'm going to go get a second, I'm going to get a third opinion, because I want to be sure the color of my skin and my gender has not affected their decision about what's wrong with me or how to treat it. Because sometimes even, they might diagnose you right, but they don't treat you right. So those are things to definitely consider as a black person. So think about it like this. We're talking about all the things you got to do, because people might look at, how much extra work that is on us, how much stress that is on us. So this is why we do have to not only have insight about what's happening, but then also learn how to take care of ourselves, learn how to let some of that go.
Yeah. And a few stories that I remember from when I was younger, these happened when I was younger, like, a while ago. Centoya Brown, this young girl, she ran away from home because her mother's boyfriend was abusing her, and she got sold into sex slavery, and she got purchased by this old man who had the intentions of killing her. So she said before he got to me, she shot him, and she was sent to prison. It was supposed to be a lifetime sentence. She got out about 15 years later. She just got out last year or the year before last. And I think that is so insane that they put her away that way, because she, first of all, she didn't know any other life. She didn't have another choice, and her life was in danger. So I want to know, like, why her life being in danger didn't matter. I need to know why her well-being wasn't important to them. But on the flip side, when we protect ourselves, we are seen as, we are demonized. But on the flip side, another woman, she was sent to jail because her husband was abusing her, and she didn't shoot him. She shot her gun at him and it hit the wall. And the police came, they arrested her, and she went on trial, and her husband admitted to abusing her, and he said that he was hitting her and that it was his fault. but they still sent her away because they said that she didn't look scared of him. This is a black woman. They said she didn't look afraid of him, and they sent her away and she got released on bail. But it's still insane that she had to go through all that, protecting herself, and even at the word of the man who admitted to doing so, she was still demonized.
Wow. Not surprised. When I was in grad school, I did a externship or practicum, because when you're in grad school, you got to get practice. And it was at a prison, and it was a women's prison. Well, it was split. Most of the women were in prison because of men, not because of their own behavior. Either they were in jail because, or prison because, their boyfriend put drugs on them to protect themselves. So, you don't have much of a record. You won't do much time. So some of those women were in jail because of that. Some were because of domestic violence. It was only a few women in jail who actually did a crime that had nothing to do with a man.
Mm.
So majority of those women was related to a relationship that they were in while they were in jail. So again, we are seeing our worth through men. You can't say this. You go to a male prison, men are not in prison because of their woman. They're not. They're not. When I used to work with young girls at a group home, my girls would run away. They would run away. Why were they running away? Because they want to be with their boyfriends. It wasn't to be like, I'm just tired, I just want my freedom. It was to be with boys. And these are some boys who were in a group home. Those boys never ran away. And I would tell them, I'm like, think about this. You're putting yourself in jeopardy. When you run away from the group home, that means you're going to be in it longer than you want to be. It's consequent because they were in a group home for reasons. The guy you're running to be with isn't violating his rules. He's not taking that risk for you, but you're taking that risk for him. What does that mean? And I would have these conversations, and they were sitting there like it just never occurred, because all they know is I want to be with him. I'm gonna run and be with him. And unfortunately, our society has made us feel that way. And this is not me bashing men, because I think we do need each other. So don't get that twisted. I do think we need each other. But I think we have, we are a consequence of a generational trauma of us having to deal with the dysfunction of men.
Yeah.
If that makes sense what I'm saying.
Absolutely. Does anybody have any other questions?
Not currently. Anybody else?
I think the letting go part. I think we covered pretty much it, because
Actually,
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna ask, how do we go about making the world more of a girl's girl place? Like, how do we? I get that, we can uplift each other and all that, but we need to be in positions of power to do that. So how do we go about making this a thing where we all support each other and embrace that and empower that?
You just said one important thing is being in a position of power, that you actually pull up women and not do like some of my bosses have done, who are women who didn't. I've had some good women bosses who really supported and really, helped me along the way, but also within your family as a woman, especially if you have sons and daughters, to not treat them differently. Because often if you have a brother, people have brothers like, yeah, my mom treated him differently. And it's usually the mothers, the fathers to some degree, but usually the mom. So it's both my children are of value. Both of my children matter. It doesn't matter what gender you are, you matter. So it's making those, it's like I had the pleasure of seeing MJ the musical. And at the very end, when he sung, Man in the Mirror, I started tearing up, because that song is so true. You have to look at yourself first. It's kind of what you said. Like, when we ride it out, you look at yourself. I'm looking at the man in the mirror. I'm asking him to change his ways. That is all you can do. My philosophy is I always can be a better person, and that's how I live my life. I will never think that I'm finished growing and evolving. Different things have affected me. June, I never thought I'd be sitting here right now. Like, I wasn't even thinking about teaching at Prairie View. Your life changes in an instant, and if you can't move with that flow, then you're stuck and you are unhappy. So as women, it's not just like you said, complimenting is a start, but it's also you taking care of you. That's you being a role model for others. Because if people look at you and say, she looks good, she's got it together, that young woman is going to look up to you and is going to say, this is something I want to be. I don't want to go after the one who's fighting everybody in the streets. That's not who I want to emulate. I want to emulate someone who's doing something good for the community, supporting each other. So those are the things, changing ourselves, who we are. is what I would say is the best, easiest answer.
Mhm.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us today.
It
This
was
was an
fun.
amazing,
It was fun.
emotional conversation.
Very.
You all look amazing. Thank you for
Thank you.
joining us.
Do.
Thank you to our live audience for joining us. I didn't mention that we had a live audience today. We're going to wrap up the show now. Dear women, be loud, take up space. You are important, and we will see you on the next episode.